I'm excited to dive into a topic that affects anyone who buys supplements, the myth of pixie dusted formulas. On the surface, some pre-workouts or energy pills look impressive, with long lists of trendy ingredients. But when you dig into the label, you often find those actives are present only in trace amounts, making the formula more hype than substance. In this presentation, we'll expose how companies sprinkle tiny doses of popular compounds to decorate labels, why these practices persist, and what the consequences are for your wallet and your gains. We'll also look at case studies that reveal massive gaps between advertised and actual doses. By the end, you'll have a practical plan to see through the hype and choose products that truly support your goals. To start, we need to define what pixie dusting actually means. Pixie dusting refers to adding tiny amounts of popular ingredients to a supplement just so the manufacturer can list them on the label. These doses are far below the levels found effective in scientific studies and are unlikely to deliver any benefit. The practice is used to make formulas appear comprehensive and cutting edge. You might see ginseng, ashwagandha, or CoQ10 tucked into a blend, but if the total weight is measured in milligrams, it's almost certainly there for decoration. This marketing tactic preys on the assumption that more ingredients mean more results. In reality, pixie dusting does nothing for your performance except lighten your wallet. Next, let's explore how this tactic is executed, often hiding behind proprietary blends and long ingredient lists. To understand the mechanics, we need to look at how labels are structured. Pixie dusting hides within proprietary blends where multiple ingredients are combined under a single weight. The manufacturer might list 20 compounds from caffeine to exotic mushrooms without revealing individual amounts. Trendy components are mixed with fillers like maltodextrin or cheap amino acids, creating the illusion of a complex formula. Because the total weight is disclosed rather than each dose, there is no way for you to verify whether the active ingredients meet the amounts used in clinical research. This lack of transparency makes it virtually impossible to compare products or replicate results. Now let's examine the regulatory loopholes that allow companies to obscure these amounts in the first place. The ability to hide doses isn't an accident. It's embedded in regulations. The Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, passed in 1994, permits manufacturers to group ingredients and list only the total weight. They must order the ingredients by predominance, largest to smallest. Yet they aren't obligated to specify how many milligrams of each are included. This loophole was meant to protect proprietary formulas, but it inadvertently gave companies cover to underdose expensive ingredients. When you see a proprietary blend weighing 5 grams, the majority could be filler with only trace amounts of the compounds you care about. Understanding this legal framework helps explain why pixie dusting continues and sets the stage for looking at the marketing tactics that perpetuate it. Marketing is a powerful force in the supplement industry, and companies know that buzzwords sell. Labels shout about superfoods, adaptogens, and antioxidant blends, boosting perceived value without necessarily improving the formula. Trendy ingredients are included in tiny quantities simply because they've been in the news. Flashy packaging, colorful fonts, and long lists of exotic compounds distract you from the actual dosing. It's easy to assume that a pre-workout with 10 different herbs is superior to one containing only caffeine and citrulline, even if the doses are meaningless. Recognizing how marketing manipulates perception prepares you to critically evaluate labels. In the next slide, we'll look at how common proprietary blends still are and why the rationale for them has shifted. Proprietary blends were originally intended to protect intellectual property. Companies didn't want competitors copying their exact ratios of herbs or nutrients. However, in practice, this protection has been turned into a marketing advantage. Today, around 1 in 5 supplement labels still use proprietary blends to hide doses. Manufacturers can claim to have a unique energy matrix or focus complex, implying secret science, when in reality those terms often cloak small amounts of popular ingredients mixed with cheap fillers. Understanding this prevalence and the shift from honest protection to outright marketing ploy helps you navigate product claims. Now let's examine some specific examples that illustrate how wide the gap can be between what's promised and what's delivered. Consider the case of CoQ10, a compound touted for supporting energy production. Some energy pills advertise that they include CoQ10, but independent testing has shown these supplements contain as little as 5 milligrams per serving. Research on CoQ10 typically uses doses of 100 to 300 milligrams per day to see any benefit. That means the product provides less than 5% of the minimum effective dose, rendering it virtually useless. This dramatic gap is a perfect illustration of pixie dusting, listing a popular ingredient in a quantity too small to do anything, simply to make the label look more appealing. Unfortunately, this is far from an isolated incident, as we'll see with other ingredients like Inulin and creatine. In another example, a manufacturer marketed a drinkable smoothie as a prebiotic powerhouse because it contained inulin, a type of fiber that can enhance calcium absorption. Research shows you need about 8 grams of inulin to see a meaningful effect. Yet when the product was analyzed, it contained only 2 grams per bottle, a quarter of the dose required. Consumers who bought it hoping to support bone health were effectively misled. This pattern of using a quarter or less of a clinically effective dose underscores the problem with pixie dusting. Ingredients are there, but in quantities that do not match the promises made. Next, we'll examine a familiar performance ingredient, creatine, and how even that can be misrepresented. Creatine is one of the most studied supplements for strength and muscle gain, with an effective daily dose of 3 to 5 grams. You might assume that when a label promises 1.5 grams of creatine per gummy, you're getting a meaningful portion of that total. Independent tests revealed that some creatine gummies contained only 84 milligrams per serving, while others had as little as a fraction of a milligram. This is pixie dusting at its worst, a product that claims to deliver a measured amount of a proven ingredient, but actually provides less than 10% of the stated dose. What's more, analyses found that about 1/3 of online supplements lack the key ingredients listed on their labels. The problem extends beyond creatine to other nutrients such as vitamin D. Even essential nutrients are susceptible to dosing inconsistencies. A survey of vitamin D supplements found that many products contained between roughly half and 1 1/3 of the dose printed on the label. In compounded versions formulated by pharmacies for individual patients, the variation was even wider, ranging from less than a quarter to nearly 1.5 times the claimed amount. Such inconsistency reflects poor quality control and exposes consumers to the risk of deficiency or overdose, neither of which is desirable. When you think you're correcting a deficiency, you might actually be taking far too little to have an effect or far too much, which could be harmful. After seeing these examples, it's clear why pixie dusting carries serious consequences, which we'll explore next. Underdose supplements aren't just a harmless marketing trick, they come with real consequences. First, you waste money on ingredients that aren't present in sufficient quantities to provide a benefit. Second, you might develop a false sense of security believing that your nutritional or performance needs are covered when they're not, leading to missed gains and stalled progress. Third, loosely regulated formulas can introduce contamination or unintended compounds, including undisclosed stimulants or allergens that could impact your health. The cumulative effect of these issues is lost time, lost money, and potential harm. To avoid these pitfalls, you need to learn how to identify warning signs on the label, a skill we'll cover in the next section. The label itself often reveals clues about pixie dusting, if you know what to look for. Long ingredient lists with tiny milligram or microgram quantities are a red flag. If a product boasts a proprietary blend without disclosing the dose of each ingredient, that's another warning sign. Be wary of formulas that claim to be complete or all-in-one and list dozens of compounds. No single serving can provide effective amounts of everything. Buzzwords like superfood matrix or adaptogen blend are often used to mask underdosed ingredients. When you see these patterns, it's a cue to investigate further or choose a more transparent product. In the next slide, we'll discuss strategies for smart supplement shopping. Navigating the supplement aisle doesn't have to be overwhelming if you follow a few basic strategies. Start by comparing the listed ingredient amounts to the doses used in published research. If a product contains significantly less than what studies indicate is effective, it probably won't deliver results. Avoid proprietary blends and so-called kitchen sink formulas that cram dozens of ingredients into one scoop. Instead, look for products that fully disclose each component and its exact dose. Third-party testing and certifications add an extra layer of assurance that the label is accurate and the product is free from contaminants. With these strategies, you can make smarter choices and sidestep the hype. Next, we'll discuss the importance of quality over quantity. When it comes to supplements, more isn't always better. You'll get far better results by focusing on a few well-dosed, evidence-based ingredients than by taking a powder loaded with a dozen underdosed compounds. Invest in single-ingredient supplements like creatine monohydrate, beta-alanine, or caffeine so you can control the dose and ensure it matches the research. While quality products may cost more upfront, they often deliver a greater return because you're paying for effective amounts rather than marketing fluff. Prioritizing quality and transparency over quantity and buzzwords helps you maximize both your performance and your budget. To make this shift, you'll also need to demand accountability from supplement companies. Your role as a consumer doesn't end after you read a label. Reach out to companies and ask for certificates of analysis or other testing documentation that proves the product contains what it claims. Support brands that openly disclose all ingredient amounts and that invest in third-party testing. At the same time, advocate for stronger labeling regulations that require dose disclosure and penalize companies for misrepresentation. When customers consistently demand transparency and evidence, manufacturers will respond. Your purchasing power, combined with vocal advocacy, can help reform the industry. But supplements are only part of the equation. Practical alternatives like whole foods and lifestyle factors are just as important. Instead of chasing every new supplement trend, remember that whole foods provide a broad spectrum of micronutrients and energy in bioavailable forms. If you do use supplements, choose single ingredient products at doses shown to be effective rather than multi-ingredient blends. Most importantly, focus on the fundamentals that truly drive performance: consistent training, sufficient sleep, and balanced nutrition. These factors will do more for your strength and recovery than any pixie dusted powder. Supplements can fill gaps or provide marginal benefits, but they're not a substitute for basics. In the next slide, we'll discuss how to empower yourself and others with this knowledge. Education is your most powerful tool in combating underdosing. Take the time to learn what ingredients do, what doses are supported by research, and how to recognize marketing tricks. Share what you've learned with training partners and friends so they can avoid being misled by flashy labels. Support companies that align with these values, and be vocal in forums and communities about the importance of transparency. By spreading awareness, you contribute to a culture that values honesty and evidence over hype. This collective shift in consumer behavior puts pressure on manufacturers to improve. Let's conclude by summarizing the key lessons from this presentation and what you can do moving forward. In summary, pixie dusting refers to the practice of adding minuscule amounts of popular ingredients to supplements to make the label look impressive. We've looked at multiple cases from CoQ10 pills to vitamin D and creatine gummies, where advertised doses were far below what the research recommends, sometimes by orders of magnitude. These practices waste your money, provide no real benefit, and erode trust. The good news is that you are not powerless. By scrutinizing labels, prioritizing quality ingredients at proper doses, and advocating for transparency, you can protect your wallet and your gains. Share this knowledge, support ethical brands, and help shift the industry toward evidence-based supplementation.